Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sanderlanche podcast. I am Data, and let me give you a brief rundown of what we're going to be doing. The show is going to involve us reading through the work of Brandon Sanderson, a couple chapters at a time, and then discussing it in depth. I have read all of this already, but my three co-hosts have not read any of it. They don't know anything, I hope, more or less, about what we're going to be reading and what the whole universe of his works is like. So it should be interesting as we get into it. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
My name is Dak. I am 31 years old and I'm from Australia.
I'm Jaymee. I'm also 31 and from Australia and married to Dak.
I am Joe. I am 30 and I am from Texas, and I am the brother of the main host, Data.
Wow, I didn't realize that I was the oldest one also. You guys are all like really close in age. Interesting. Okay, and so let's get into it. Grab onto something, everybody. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
My revolution carries me in a moment lost in time. My revolution sets me free. I will flow across the lines.
So we're starting with Mistborn, the Final Empire. The preface. Oh, I almost said. Is that what it's called? Preface, or is it called? No, I gotta go back and look. Prologue. See, I didn't even read it correctly. Read the prologue and chapter 1. Yeah, I know. I need to have all the notes in front of me. I've actually got the book up on my Kindle app, or my Kindle for the computer in front of me, so I can look at it as we go. But see, we started off on the right foot. Prologue and chapter 1 today. How did you guys feel about these, like, overall, your first introduction to this world?
Well, I've got questions to start with, but on the whole, it was cool to read and definitely whet the appetite.
Yeah, well, give me an example. What kind of questions did it leave you with?
Obviously it's like how the powers and everything of this universe work, because obviously there are some. Both the prologue and chapter 1 had like these italicized someone giving a monologue, and we don't know who that is, so I feel like we're gonna have to get into that at some point. And because stuff seems crazy, especially at the end of the prologue. So what's gonna come of that, and what's gonna happen to this world?
What about you, Jaymee? What do you think?
Yeah, I liked it. I don't tend to read a lot of this this kind of thing, the fantasy side of things. So it really kind of threw you into it straight away. There's no mucking about. You're introduced to everybody and sort of really like in the middle of it straight away. And there's a lot to absorb from the prologue and chapter 1. 3 sort of different settings straight away. And you just try to catch up and really, I found myself reading something and then going, wait, did I read that? Did I imagine that? I don't even know. So I think falling into this world, this world, it sounds like it's going to be pretty crazy and pretty involved, which is pretty cool. I'm sort of keen to learn a bit more about it.
What kind of stuff do you usually read? I know you and your preferences the least of anybody on here, so I'm curious.
Yeah, I quite like crime. So I'm reading the Kathy Reich's books at the moment. So like forensic crime and things like that. So yeah, not a lot of fantasy.
Really detailed crime.
Yeah, I did my degree in forensics, so it kind of up my alley. But yeah, this is nice. This is a bit different. So I'm excited to learn a bit more.
I guess it makes sense if that's your degree. You would be interested in that sort of
Yeah.
What about you, Joe? What do you think of the first two bits?
Well, and this is where I have trouble. It's really hard for me, and this may be why I've never read his stuff before. It's really hard for me to get into a book when I'm thrown into what seems like the middle of an ongoing story, and I don't know where I am or what's going on or who these people are. So, while I did enjoy kind of the mystery of it, at the same time, that's why I love Jim Butcher, but I can't get into Codex Alera because I felt like I don't know anything about this story. It's confusing to me, but of course, this is just the prologue in the first chapter. So, but I like the character in the prologue, the character in the first, the main character in the prologue, or what seems to be the main character in the prologue, Kelsier, I guess. But I don't know how I don't know how I feel about Vin yet, because we haven't seen much of her. So
right?
Well, she's been in a situation where it's really hard for her to show off her personality, because otherwise she might get smacked in the face. So.
Right. I did
that's
like how she has some kind of luck powers. I thought that was pretty cool. But
yeah, it's very, very mysterious how the magic is working right now. And that's, if anybody, I know Dak has read the Dresden Files. I don't know if you've looked at Jim Butcher's other series, the Codex Alera, but in one, in the Dresden Files, like, he explains in detail a lot. Like, this is how the magic works. This is what magic is, because, like, Harry Dresden is like a teacher of, like, or a big magic nerd, and he's teaching the reader at all times. Like, this is how magic works. In Codex Alera,
it's very based in science.
Yeah,
scientific
it is.
methods and whatnot.
And I think you'll find as we go that actually Brandon Sanderson tries very hard to keep his magic scientific. He's a master of hard magic systems, which is like magic with hard rules, and we'll talk more about that when we learn kind of more about the magic. I've got like some outside quotes by him and stuff like that I want to show y'all as we learn more about the magic. But in Jim Butcher's Codex Alera series, he just drops you in. He's like, okay, magic is happening. You figure out how it works. I'm not telling you, because everyone in this universe already understands how it works. So it's very different approaches. And I can understand why Joe's saying, he's like, I can't get into that as much where they're not explaining anything to you. I don't think you'll have that problem as much as we get more into this book, but I guess we'll find out.
But I guess, yeah, for the setting the scene, like, they'll definitely set up, these are the powers, and they sort of vaguely hint at how they work, but they don't give you the details. So it's like, well, I guess I got to set up number one, that there are powers, before number two, how they work.
Mm.
Right. I like the line. It's kind of almost a throwaway line in the prologue where he's like, I know I had some, whatever it was, iron in my stomach, or I could feel it or whatever. And I was like, so wait, he eats metal? I don't understand.
I had that thought as well. Like, the thought that immediately popped into my head was like, what, does this dude have like a can of baked beans? He cracks the can, pours out the beans, and eats the can?
That's an excellent. I love that picture. I was just thinking, like, as he said that, I was like thinking like you take off a bottle cap and you eat the bottle cap instead of drinking the bottle. But I like yours better.
Yeah, and that like thought was almost helped by the fact that he brought all this food to these people, and they were like, he was like, aren't you gonna eat any? He's like, no, I'm good.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
So maybe he just survives off of metals, is your theory at this point?
No, I really don't know. Maybe it's like he can eat regular food, he just chooses not to.
I mean, we also know that he did raid the stores for that, so I guess he could have eaten his portion before then. But
I reckon
true.
he was snacking earlier, for sure.
While everyone else is working, Kelsey is just like snacking. Okay, we're getting into details. Let's get into the details of the chapter before we just pick a random spot in the middle, I guess.
Yeah.
So, the very beginning, we have this italicized part, which I guess is called an epigraph. Both chapters had one. So, what do you guys think just of this in general? Like, of this style of writing where you're including something weird at the beginning of your chapters, or specifically of any of the specifics in here?
Well, in the first one, in front of the prologue, it specifically mentions, like, he's the hero of ages, the savior. And then in front of the other chapter, the first chapter, like, he says, perhaps another person reading my life would name me a religious tyrant. And I'm like, okay, those two things together make me think, is this the emperor, like, who set up the final empire? Because, like, just from the vague hints that were dropped throughout the chapters, he upturned everything, turned the sky red, and everything went to hell under his rule. But the biggest tyrants always think they're in the right, so he probably still thinks of himself as a hero, but he's entertaining the idea that, I could be a tyrant to someone else. I don't know. That was the impression I got anyway.
So it would be interesting if it is the tyrant ruler of this empire or whatever, if he's sitting there thinking to himself, am I the bad guy? Because I guess usually you don't get introspective evil tyrants in these stories. You don't have somebody sitting there being like, I wonder if I'm the bad guy. Well, I gotta do what you gotta do. Did anyone else feel like
specifically calls himself the hero of ages?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. So
and it's capitalized too, as if hero of ages is like a thing.
Yeah, that's like a well-known title or something.
Anyone else feel that same way or different ways about the intros?
The intros to me kind of almost seem like Skyrim, where you find a book and it's just got some stuff in it that's kind of background or tertiary. Like, I almost felt like it didn't have anything to do with the story. Like, it was almost a quote from some person in the world that doesn't actually have anything to do with how the story's unfolding. probably just like thoughts or things that apply philosophically to what's going on, but not necessarily specific to a character in the story.
Yeah, and I've seen books that do that have quotes from either real or fictional people within the universe. Like I read a book the other day that had like a Winston Churchill quote at the beginning of one chapter, and it just kind of, I guess it's supposed to set up the theme for the chapter, that this famous quotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if it's the writings of a character that maybe we're yet to meet, it'll make a little bit more sense as we move through the books.
Okay, so we'll move into the beginning of the prologue. The very first line I kind of want to talk about is ash fell from the sky. What kind of picture does that kind of paint of this world for you? Like, what do you see when you read that?
Shit's messed up.
That's probably true. In a world that's working correctly, you wouldn't have ash falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess my first thought was like, are we in the middle of a disaster? Like I kind of, you think about like volcanoes erupting and things going quite wrong. Yeah, I sort of didn't pick it as being that was like the normal when I first read the line. I was like, oh no, what have we dropped into? But I mean, it definitely paints a picture of a pretty horrific place.
Yeah.
Again, for me, I was going to say, again, for me, I'm going to make another Elder Scrolls reference. It reminded me of Morrowind, the dark elf country in that world. A big volcano erupted, and so ash just like routinely falls from the sky there all the time. And so it just gave me that picture of, obviously there was some kind of volcanic disaster or something, and now that's just a part of their life, is that ash falls from the sky.
So in the game, the volcano erupted once and ash falls like forever?
Yeah, it's like a constantly active volcano. And
okay, so it's constantly kind of like belching out ash or something. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense than one time, like 100 years ago, a volcano erupted and there's still ash falling.
We're still getting it.
But I like Jamie's point that it kind of starts out, you're like, maybe this is just, there's a current disaster going on and this is not a normal thing, should not be a normal thing. And I feel like he kind of tries to address that, because when we get to the beginning of chapter 1, the very first line of chapter 1 is, again, ash fell from the sky, as if he's trying to get you used to the fact that this is the thing that happens. Or
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe it's just still part of the same disaster, I guess. It's possible. So after that, we meet a couple of characters. We've got Lord Tresting, and he is annoyed that ash is falling on his pretty outfit that he just bought, that just came on a canal boat. And he is talking while he watches the peasants work to an obligator. So the setup of the beginning of the chapters is this guy standing out here with this more important dude, and they're watching the peasants work, as it says. I think I just like to note that I think this may be the only time the word peasants actually appears in the book, is when he says like the peasants were an indolent, unproductive lot, and then he calls them another name after that, and I think that is the name that's used for the rest of the book. The author wanted you to know that this word means peasants, and so he was going to introduce them with peasants. What do you guys think of Tresting and the obligator and what is going on here?
Yeah, I have no time for Tresting. He doesn't sound like a nice person at all. He's worried about the ash falling on his clothes. It's like, really, dude? That's the most important thing going on to you right now? Yeah, it just paints this picture of, I guess, that this life is, maybe this ash is normal. Like, no one seems to be panicking or anything. So this is just the setting that we've got. He's obviously, this rich guy, probably in a position of power. Yeah, all these servants, and I doubt he treats them very well. And, using the, peasants, they're unproductive. They're people in brown smocks. Like, they're not wealthy. They're not treated well. He's not going to be, a good guy.
He's obviously looking to grab himself some more power too, by the way that he's talking in his inner monologue about the obligator. And I guess he's not that interesting to me, especially because what happens later in the prologue, but the obligator is very interesting to me. Obligators, inquisitors, it sounds very much like some kind of religious kind of sect of people that like a Spanish Inquisition almost. They are like the enforcement of laws and like the empire. but in almost a religious sect kind of way. So I'm pretty interested to see how that is expanded or explained.
Yeah, so it definitely it talks about obligators, and there's a lot of like information dump in this prologue to try to get you to understand the world while trying to keep it, interesting and not just telling you stuff. He goes into details about, this guy had this many eye tattoos, while like less important people had less eye tattoos, and that was how you tell how important an obligator is. And then there's this, it comes up later when he talks about the Inquisitor, which I get how you get Spanish Inquisition from that. And the two of them are talking about, how lazy the ska are, which every time I read ska, it makes me think of, like a band. But and the alligator's like, oh, you should see the ska in the city. They're even more lazy. And then he talks about how once upon a time people tried to run away, but he executed their families, and that stopped that real fast. So clearly he's not a great guy, and also clearly these are, like slaves. It doesn't call them that specifically, but when you start talking about, oh, what happens if they run away? Well, execute their families if they run away. That's pretty clearly slavery. And it goes on to say, like all ska, they belong to the Lord Ruler, trusting only least the workers from his God. And I'm curious, when you read that the Lord Ruler, that sounds like, some guy who's in charge of stuff. And then it goes on to say that he's their God. So what does that mean to you? Like, is he paying like a cult who owns stuff in the name of God, or is it some guy who also calls himself a god? Or I don't know how to take that the first time I read it.
Lord Ruler, who also is God, like, to me that kind of reinforced the thought I was having, is that this is like a society that's ruled by a religious sect, and whether there's one Lord Ruler or whether there's many, they're viewed as gods or, sub-gods, whatever, what have you, whatever they choose to be known as. It's these inquisitors, these obligators that kind of build the foundation or hold up this theocratic society of religious rulers that are considered themselves as God. Just like ancient pharaohs or any old religious society that viewed their king or their rulers as gods. That's how I felt how I read it when I initially saw that.
So Lord Ruler could be like a pharaoh, basically, or even like a group of pharaohs here.
Right.
Interesting. What about our Aussies? I don't know how religiously inclined either of y'all are in general, but it's going to be a theme of the book as we go.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is interesting I hadn't really thought about. I remember thinking when I read it, like when his was capitalized, and I was like, hang on a minute, this is this is how you would speak about a god. It'd be interesting to see how that all comes together, and matching that with the obligators having some kind of almost religious significance when you read about them. Yeah, definitely be interesting to see how that framework works in that society.
Yeah. As far as the obligators go, I think like at one point they explicitly compare them to a priest, don't they? Trying to find the exact quote. So, all right, if they're the envoys from the main body of the empire, the ones who come down and contact the Lord Rulers, then obviously there's got to be some religious significance there if you've got that comparison. So I guess, I don't know, like why you'd see the Lord Rulers as the gods. I don't know, just the fact that there is an emperor that they answer to, like they're probably closer to like the demigods or the servant gods. The emperor is like the god above all. I guess he'd be the Zeus in this one. Yeah, I guess that would be how that sort of functions. They lean on the peasants to look up at them and worship them, and they treat them like crap because, hang on, sorry, train of thought's just coming back. Yeah, just the fact that they refer to them as creatures. They treat them as less than themselves. So there is that sort of god and human dynamic. It's like the gods are always like, "Hey, mortal, fuck you," and the god, and especially the Greek gods, but a lot of other pantheons would always just treat the mortals like garbage. So that's a similar sort of parallel that you can see through this. If the rulers and the emperor are the gods, then the peasants are the not equal, and they will never aspire to be. They always have to make sure to remind them this is your place.
And that's interesting because it's true that the clearly the like even Lord Trusting, who I think they kind of established he's like a country lord or something, so he's not as important as like he's the Obligator says that very well, Trusting, I'll carry your proposal to Lord Venture, and so he's like, oh, he's you know he's trying to get some more power, like Joe was saying at the beginning, and so he's not particularly powerful himself, but clearly he feels that he is way over this slave class, if it even is a class. He like Dak said, they talk about them like they're a different species practically, like they're animals, and so
I was trying to build this picture of what these creatures were when I first read it. And I thought Dak's point was really interesting that, it's not that they're a creature necessarily, but that what we're seeing is, the human, this nobleman, they believe they are just a superior being. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I never even thought about that at first, that, by the time you get to the first few paragraphs, you haven't seen anything. They haven't talked about, like, details about them. They talk about them like they're creatures, but you might not even realize that they're kind of human until later when you hear them talking and like actually encounter them some.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get more world building. The Obligator's looking at his pocket watch, which I think says an interesting thing about what you would expect the level of technology to be in this world, but I'm not sure that we see that coming through necessarily. And we get some more world building where he talks about how the sun is red.
Yeah. Because as if you don't need a further indicator that things are not right.
Right, yeah, that also kind of just screams. It's like that's not what you want.
No.
That's
the Obligator doesn't have a name, does he? Or at least it doesn't come up here.
No, they seem to just talk about him as the Obligator. I don't think they ever mention his name. They say that he is Straff Venture's own Obligator, like he belongs to that guy. So so it seems like
it's just sort of odd. Then it's like he's obviously so important and Trusting is desperate to impress him, but he either doesn't know his name, or if he even has one. It's like, does the Obligator have any personality beyond belonging to Lord Venture? Or is he just purely like his right hand? He has no identity of his own.
That's an interesting point. We don't see a whole lot about him.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit further down, but I think they named the Obligator in chapter 1, didn't they?
I think that was a different person.
Yeah, I think that's a different Obligator.
But I think what she's saying is that they do have names.
They have names.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
We just don't know this guy's name.
Yeah. Unnamed Obligator number 1. So Lord Trusting, I mean, just to talk a little bit more about what the background seems to be, it's like he's obviously got some proposal to this Lord, and the Obligator kind of hints at a possible future in Luthadel, which seems to be, maybe a capital city, if not the capital city. And so it sounds like there's room for advancement, at least for these Lord types. And you kind of, at least I got the sense that the reason he brings up him dallying with the Ska is to indicate, that's actually a crime, and that they frown upon that. And I'm assuming it's because it could lead to children of Ska being illegitimate heirs to whatever property these nobles might have. So I thought that was an interesting kind of thing, that he has the ability to move up from his station, and also it's taboo to have relations with Ska, I assume, for that purpose.
Yeah, we definitely get, he brings up, now I'm trying to find the point where he brings up, here, let's just kind of go through this. So he says he'll take his proposal to Lord Venture, and he's like, I managed to impress Lord Venture's Obligator. And then the Obligator says, well, I'm going to go home now. And he's like, but you just got here, you're not going to stay for dinner? He's like, no. But there is another matter that I wanted to bring up. I came not only at the behest of Lord Venture, but to look into some matters for the Canton of Inquisition, also capitalized. Rumors say that you like to dally with your Ska woman. So I guess that right there hopefully tells us that that the Ska and the Lords are roughly the same species, because if they weren't, that would be kind of...
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he says, don't worry. If there were any real worries about your actions, a Steel Inquisitor would have been sent in my place. And then Trusting says, Inquisitor? He'd never seen one of the inhuman creatures, but he'd heard stories. So that, I guess, seems like a seed for later. There's some sort of inhuman creatures working for someone in here.
The enforcers are like, when the crimes are really bad, they're the ones who show up and shut it down.
And then he tells him, what I've seen and heard here indicate that you always clean up your messes. So it's almost like it's not necessarily that dallying with the Ska women is bad, because he says, no, you're fine. it's that you have to clean up after yourself, which is disturbing in and of itself, I guess.
Yeah, it's basically like, don't make your problem become our problem sort of attitude.
That's an interesting way to look at it. He's like, yeah, we don't want a problem coming up later.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that it's like maybe, they could become heirs to this the house or something like that if there's an illegitimate child. We'll have to see if that's... And then just to like further elaborate on the point, he's like, after the obligator starts to go, he's like, I'll have to celebrate tonight, he thought. There was that young girl in the 14th Hoffel he'd been watching for some time. So, yeah, I think it really hammers in or supposed to hammer in for us that this guy is a garbage human.
Yeah, he just treats his scar as basically like his personal, I don't want to say breeding ground, but I guess just like, you're my property, I can do with you whatever I want, and like if you're a woman on my property, that means I can have you whenever I want, which is just despicable.
Yeah, there's nothing in the entire prologue that's painting him in a positive light.
Nope.
Which, makes it all that much better for everyone when he ends up dead by the end of the prologue. So we can all be happy.
Yeah, that was one thing I was reading, and I was like, okay, I got to try to remember all these names because they're throwing a bunch of names at me already. Lord Tresting. Okay, I got to remember that guy. Lord Tresting. And then when I got to the end of the prologue, I was like, oh, never mind. I don't need to remember him.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you get the impression like that anyone or who do you think is important in this prologue, basically?
Kelsier, definitely.
Yeah, Kelsier, definitely. I agree. He seems like he'd be a kind of important character. Anybody else that you feel like is going to be showing up again?
Maybe the old man. Introduced... Sorry, Jaymee. I was going to say maybe the old man Ska.
Yeah, Menace.
Yeah, I think really like the prologue's done a good job of setting up sort of the types of people and that we're going to run into, and I guess the structure. You've got like who's nobility and who are the slaves, really. We know that you've got your taskmasters, you've got your obligators. Like these people are going to be people we're going to run into, and I guess that first part of the prologue's done a pretty good job of setting out where people sit, which side they're on, and their relationships. So it may, like, especially that first bit of the prologue, we might not necessarily see those exact characters again, but at least we know as we're moving forward what sort of people or what sort of characters these are and the relationships they'll have.
Yeah, you feel like you're starting to get a handle on kind of the structure of things vaguely and maybe what the world is like.
Yeah.
How the society functions.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Tresting looks out and he sees a guy looking back at him, one of the Ska, who in his eyes there was a spark, a fire of defiance. And so he's like, oh, I better have that guy beaten. And then he can't find him again, which that in of itself seems like a superpower there, is that he turns around and turns back and the guy's gone.
He did the Batman thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, this is Commissioner Gordon now.
Yeah, I mean, later in the prologue, they talk about how he just walked off. So obviously, I am assuming that Lord Tresting just missed it because the other Ska definitely noticed.
Yeah, and it may be that he can't tell them apart. And he even says it's like they were so hard to tell apart. So it may just be that he doesn't consider them interesting enough to differentiate between them. They're all dressed the same, bent over brown plants, trying to keep the ash off. So I guess it would be hard to a bunch of bent over brown robe people differentiate.
The only real description that Tresting gives of the guy is that he has the spark of defiance. He doesn't notice anything else about him. So
right.
It's just like something he's not used to seeing on these people. Like the person themselves is irrelevant, really, how they physically look. It's just, hang on, that's a weird look on that face. But he doesn't really take notice of what the face itself looks like.
Might be hard to find afterwards, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when he can't find him, he doesn't want to look bad in front of the obligator. So he's like, those people are being lazy. Beat them. And the guy's like, okay, I guess.
I think it even mentions that the taskmaster, he didn't need a specific reason to give them a beat. He's like, okay, that's fine, which I think says a lot about them too.
Makes you wonder if the taskmaster is, one of these, the guy handing out the beating, is he one of these like lord types? Because he clearly works for this guy, or is he like a Ska who has some more power and he's okay with beating the other ones?
I don't think he is a Ska because like Tresting like just doesn't know like anything about the Scar, but he knows this guy's name. So like if he was a Scar, he probably wouldn't have a name, at least not in Tressting's eyes.
So that tells us that if he is one of like the Lord types, then it tells us that they're not all like powerful dudes, because this guy's clearly a working man out in the fields beating on people. It's tough work.
Yep, every Lord needs an enforcer.
And if he really has like hundreds of these Ska or thousands, then he probably needs more than one of those guys. So he probably has a bunch of them working for him. Keep getting the crops coming in. So then we move on away from Tressting, and we get Kelsier's point of view. And he thinks about how he's heard whispers of long ago when the sun was not red, and the sky had not been clogged with smoke and ash, and so on and so forth, times before the Lord Ruler. And so there's a hint of something here, maybe. It always makes me wonder. It's like, are there just rumors about times back then and the world was always like it was now, or is he saying that the Lord Ruler actually physically changed things here? Because that's a lot for the Lord Ruler to have changed to make the sun a different color.
I don't know. It doesn't really go into how long ago he reckons this was, does it?
No, it just says once long ago and before the Lord Ruler. So before that guy, a long time ago. That's all the information we get so far, at least. So
that could be anything. It could be 70 years. It could be 1,000.
Yeah. But still, I mean, even if it's 1,000, I'm like, changing the color of the sun is a big deal. Like, I don't, how does it, if that happened 1,000 years ago, then something really fucked up must have happened 1,000 years ago to cause that. Unless it's, I guess, like a natural progression. Their sun is turning into a red supergiant or something.
I mean, it could be that the sun is red because of all the ash.
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
Like,
So
it could just be the way it's shining through. Like, they're just so used to it now that they don't see a big yellow ball in the sky. It is just red because it's coming through all of this ash and
that's a good
smoke.
point. Yeah. If the sky's constantly filled with ash, then maybe that causes it to look differently. That makes total sense. So we get Kelsier thinking about all this stuff, and he goes into the Ska hovels. Soon the mists would come. And I feel like it's called, the series is called Mistborn, so clearly the mists have to come into it at some point.
And there's a lot of reverence and fear about the mists, among the Scar at least.
Yeah.
And about things that are out there hiding in the mists as well. So you get the impression there's definitely going to be a lot coming to play here.
No Ska would venture outside once night arrived. Their fear of the mists was too strong. And he says, I'll have to cure them with that someday.
So the mists just always come at night is the idea there.
Yeah, that's definitely what it sounds like. It's like every night there's mists and nobody goes outside. Which I feel like would make running away really hard. Like, you're not going to run away from your plantation if you're scared to be outside at night.
Yeah.
Well, they say that too, that there's a lack of, there was no guards or anything because they weren't going to go anywhere. So it's almost like, the Lords don't need to worry about it because they're scared enough to stay rather than having to actually put on any security to make sure people don't run away. Also, they'll kill their families, so.
Right, yeah, that can't hurt.
There's lots of reasons to not go outside.
Then Kelsier goes inside. He's like, hey, how's everybody's day? And Tepper is like, our day was filled with work, something you managed to avoid.
This guy has a real chip on his shoulder.
He really does. And Kelsier even says, like, he was young to be an elder. And then we find out there's another guy there older than him. And he's like, why do you let that guy take charge? And the guy's like, you got to pick your battles, man. It's not worth it.
I can't be bothered.
So this is all just like 30 people crammed into one hovel, isn't it?
Yep.
Like, they don't say how many hovels are out there, how many
we know
people
there's at least
does Tressting
14
have working here. At least 14.
Yeah, because he says that girl in hovel 14 earlier. So we know there's at least 14 hovels. Probably more.
All right, so roughly 30 people to a hovel, at least 14. So that's about 400 or so people.
At least.
Did it say how many Scar Tressting had working for him?
I don't know. Let's go back and look here. It says hundreds of people in brown smocks, but I think that's the closest we get to an actual number.
Right. Okay, so a whole lot of people crammed into a very small area.
Yeah. So it's not a great life for them, but that probably comes with being a slave. Don't expect it to be great, especially slaves who are out working in the fields, bent over all day.
Yeah. And it's like, well, the slave masters are bad, but the mists sound worse, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be pretty bad, right? If the mists are worse than getting beaten all day.
Yeah.
And Kelsier says, field work hasn't ever really suited me. It's far too hard on my delicate skin, and shows arms that are lined with layers and layers of thin scars that covered his skin running lengthwise, as if some beast had repeatedly raked its claws up and down his arms. So that paints a picture.
Or something. Been in some battles before.
Yeah, whatever happened to him, it cannot have been particularly fun. And doesn't say the rest of him is scarred up, just his arms.
For some reason, I don't know, I don't recall this being written in the prologue, but for some reason I got the impression that the mists did that to him. That's the impression I got. I don't know why, if it's not written anywhere, but that's the impression I got, was that the mists made those marks on him.
Yeah, okay.
I think we get a very brief... Hold on, let's see if we can get there. So Kelsier talks about all the reasons that people get beatings. He once saw a guy get beaten because his master said he blinked inappropriately. And then he's like, hey, here's all this food. Oh, okay, now here is men who venture out into the mist lose their souls, a woman whispered, when Kelsier starts to actually try to leave. And they're like, no, don't go outside. And then he's
Sorry,
like,
I'm just trying to find the page.
It's like, had Kelsier walked in the mist? What then had happened to his soul?
You know, I've probably blinked at somebody in such a way as to deserve a beating.
That's impressive. I don't think that I've managed that. I had a teacher tell me that I rolled my eyes at her once, and I was in like second grade or something, and I had no idea what rolling your eyes meant. So I'm like, I don't know what that is. And she's like, don't give me that. You know what I'm talking about. You rolled your eyes at me. I'm like, no, literally, I have no idea what that means. Like, I've heard the expression. I don't know how to do it. And I think eventually I convinced her, and she's like, it's doing this. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't mean to do that if I did that.
You totally did. You meant to.
Yeah, I totally meant to do the thing, but I had no idea.
Like, I'm just trying to picture, like, how can you blink at someone wrong? Like, I understand it's meant to be like, this is obviously how messed up society is, but even so, it's like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, you just have you blink in such a way as to display some really, like, shitty, like, personality. Like, oh, God, look at this guy. Blink, blink.
I don't know that you get... I can understand if you're moving your eyes in some direction while you're doing it. Like, if you're doing an eye roll or, like, looking away or something. But just staring at them blink, blink, I can't picture it.
Hey, man, I work with customers face-to-face all the time, and I'll blink, and they'll be like, what's your problem, man? Be like, nothing.
My eyes need
Maybe
moisture.
It's a bit like it's like a Morse code or something. Maybe he's said something with his eyes he didn't know he said, and that was like, nope, not having that.
Three quick blinks. That's a sign for asshole.
Yep.
Ugh. So yeah, like this guy, I have a shit life.
Yeah, I think that's drilled home pretty well in this chapter. So Kelsier starts talking about, like, he's like, oh, I guess I'm staying. And he says that he's come from the north, where the Lord Ruler's touch is less noticeable. And the Lord Ruler lets his lords decide what to do out there. And one man, Lord Renu, I don't know how you pronounce that, Renaux, has even ordered his taskmasters to stop unauthorized beatings, and he's considering paying them wages. And Tepper's like, bullshit. You don't pay slaves. So what do you guys think? Is Kelsier honest here? Is there actually somebody out there about to be paying their ska? Because I didn't
think he was being dishonest, but he may have been exaggerating a bit to try to get them to think, because that seems to be his mission there. Is he's trying to get them to think differently. Like, this isn't the only life you could have. You could have a different kind of life, and then he kind of, will get there, but he kind of forces them to have a different kind of life because of what he does next. But
yeah, he's trying to inspire the uprising any way he can. It's like, all right, words didn't do the trick, so later on he does something a bit different.
Then he pulls out some sarcasm in response to him. He's like, my apologies. I didn't realize that Goodman Tepper had been to Lord Renew's estates recently. When you dined with him last, did he tell you something? I love the sarcasm. I can't get enough of super sarcastic characters. So I love that bit.
It's always good just to see, like, the arrogant, like, guy just be like, no, I know what's going on. You can't do that. You got to. And then someone just goes, yeah, shut up, mate. Just completely shut down the dickhead.
And it kind of does. He's like, Tepper blushed, and then he says he tries to come back, and he's like, I know who you are. You're the one they call the survivor. Those scars on your arms give you away. So apparently, the scars that he has on his arm are somewhat unique in that they label him as the survivor. What do you think he survived?
Well, maybe that was. Yeah, and sorry, Dak, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But maybe that's where I got that idea of it being the mist, because they're all afraid that, like, you go out in the mist, you don't come back.
But yeah, like you gotta always get called a survivor if you do something that no one thinks you can survive, which seems to be the mist in this case. So
I don't have the book in front of me, so I can't really double check it, but I thought there was a reference to him like being in a pit or something. Like when he's talking to Menace, I thought they have a conversation about something along those lines.
Jaymee is exactly right, because he gives them the food, and then while they're eating, the older guy comes over. He's like, "Yeah, I don't want any of that food. It upset my stomach." But he says, let's see if I can get to it.
Yeah, I've got it here. So Menace looks at his scars and says, "Yeah, I've seen scars like this on someone else. Like, he was trying to speak of rebellion as well, and Tresting sent him to the pits of Hathsin, where he worked until he died. And it took less than a month." So don't really know what the pits of Hathsin are.
Don't sound so great.
No, clearly not a fun place.
Yeah, sounds like it sounds like a mine to me.
Yeah, basically the mines in Mordor.
Oh, well, see, there you go. Yeah, it's just Mordor.
Yeah, that's why there's ash falling from the sky. There's actually the red sun's actually the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, it's like a secret prequel that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
So it turns out this is the Sauron origin story.
Yeah, the scars are actually from, like, the ring. It burned him real good.
All the way up his arm? God damn.
Yeah.
We're spending longer on this one than I thought, so I'm going to try to go a little faster so I don't keep everyone too long. It's like he says, "You ask why I smile. The Lord Ruler thinks he's claimed laughter and joy for himself. I'm disinclined to let him." And then we get the first taste here where it says Kelsey could hear the pain contained in those. Somebody starts screaming, and he hears it. And it says he burned tin. The tin sat with the other allomantic metals within his stomach, swallowed earlier, waiting for him to draw upon them. And so it says that he swallowed some tin, and now he is burning it.
Yeah. This is great. It gives me an idea of him just, like, picking up random metal objects and just being like, "Ow, ow."
And let's see, it
imagine
enhances
like
the senses.
Imagine like the guy in the circus, like the knife swallower or the sword swallower, and then it's like, oh look, it's not coming back up because I need that later.
Yeah. Well, there was a guy. There's a story about a guy in France who like ate a whole airplane piece by piece out of metal because he had, like, a super strong stomach lining or something. And that's.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember that guy's name, but.
Turns out he was allomantic.
Yeah, he was magical also. What's up?
Well, I thought that was really good when they first made this reference when he was burnt tin. I was like, what? But then it's sort of, you've fallen into this, you're thinking, okay, it's like, well, you've got this rich guy, you've got all these peasants, and, life is pretty hard for them. And then it just sort of snaps you and goes, whoa, hang on, this is something different. What is this? Like, you've sort of spent so long learning about these characters and their way of life. And then just, boom, straight away, here comes that magical element.
Right.
Which sort of, keeps you back on your toes as well.
It turns out that the screaming is coming from a girl. It's getting farther away. And the guy says, "Poor Jess, that child of hers was a curse. It's better for Ska not to have pretty daughters." Which, that's like, makes you grate your teeth. At least it does to me. I'm just like, ugh.
He's your next reminder that life as a Ska sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
And he says, "Does Lord Tresting ever bring the girls back when he's done?" And Menace says, "No, Lord Tresting's a law-abiding nobleman. He has the girls killed after a few weeks. He doesn't want to catch the eye of the Inquisitors. So nobody likes the Inquisitors."
But the Ska themselves are just like, that's just how life is. That's just how it happens. Like, yeah, it's sad, but what can you do about it? And like, Jesus Christ.
And here's the only taste that we get of one of the reasons maybe why, where right after that it says he couldn't afford to have half-breed children running around, children who might possess powers that Ska weren't even supposed to know existed.
Which bears a lot of questions as to how Kelsier has these powers if he is Ska.
If his powers are the powers he's talking about. That's true too. Maybe Tresting can do something. Maybe it's the powers that Kelsier has. Maybe it's some other powers. That would be weird if there was like two whole different magic sets, I guess. So Kelsier then goes out into the night, into the mist, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, he went out there." And Menace is like, "Such a shame to see a man who survived the pits find death here on a random plantation, trying to protect a girl everyone else had given up for dead." And we skip to the morning, and all of a sudden everyone's getting up, and they're smelling smoke. And so one of the guys is like, it always smells like smoke. The ash mounts are violent this year. But the old man is the only one who realizes something might be different about this. And they find the girl, the daughter. She's back. And the mom says she came pounding on the door, crying in the mist. Flynn was sure it was just a mist wraith impersonating her. But I had to let her in.
That's a phrase that really gets you interested. Mist wraith.
Right? And that was... that's very interesting to me, at least. I'm like, wraith immediately makes me think of, not real. Like a ghost or something of the mist. But I don't know what pictures that conjure up for you guys.
Wraith always makes you think of like ghost, something that doesn't really have a solid form but sort of takes another form, and the fact that it's associated with mist makes you think, all right, so the ghost is just like using the mist and coming together in sort of a form out of that he can use to attack people. So
if that's the case, maybe they're justified in being scared of going out in the mist if there's actually
totally fair
ghost things out there.
It's like the mist is the monster.
I think too, I can't remember the character's name, but the character that was with Jess was like, don't open the door kind of thing. Like she's like, but that's I couldn't risk it. I had to, it was my daughter, I had to let her in. Whereas is this common? Like, do these mist wraiths make a habit of knocking on doors? And like, what do they do? Do they come into people's hovels? Are they safe in the hovels? Do you just not open the door in the dark? I think there's a really interesting story about what exactly are they afraid of in the mist? What do these things do? Do they come into their homes, or do they almost bait people to come outside? Are they mischievous? It's a lot of questions there. I don't know.
Like mischievous makes them sound almost like not as bad. You're like they're just scoundrels. Those mist wraiths.
Do they trick people into walking into their own doom? I don't know.
Well, they did say like they thought the girl screaming was a wraith, so that does seem to hold reason, and like they will try and trick people into coming out by imitating their loved ones or something. So if they go out to see what's going on, then all of a sudden the wraiths can attack or do whatever it is they do.
But also, I think Jess made a point of saying that when they'd gone back into the sun, so she wasn't a mist wraith. So it's like, was the daughter in the house for any period of time, like if it was nighttime when they came back or something, I'm really curious about what these mist wraiths actually are and what they do, and can they be among you without you knowing? Like, they can't go out in the sun, but how long can they be in your presence and you just not know?
What kind of night must that be for that girl if everyone in the hovel is suspecting you're a monster and you're spending the night in there waiting for morning so they can see if you disappear in the sun?
Yeah,
plus,
awful.
If she's left out there, who's say a real mist wraith wouldn't show up.
But then we find out nobody shows up to break up the group of Ska getting together, and nobody comes to kill the old people who can't get out of the hovels in the morning, which is mentioned, where Menace is like, every morning I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get up or not, but I don't want to be here when they come to kill the people who are too old or sick to work. So it just continues to be a fucked up life for the Ska. It's like if you're too old or sick to work one day, they kill you.
I just said so casually. I think that's what gets me. It's like every reminder is just like this is just what happens.
But they don't know any different.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your whole life from birth to death, I guess you get used to it in some way. Yep. But then we find out that all of the noble Lord Trusting and everybody in the house is dead now. And they're like, holy crap, he had like a dozen soldiers. How did one guy go and kill them all? And so, like, the only thing that we know about Kelsier and his magic at this point is he was burning tin, he said. That's how he phrased it. And it enhanced his senses, so he could hear stuff better, he could feel stuff better. He mentions he could feel the grain of the wood on the stool that he was sitting on better. So did that in some way help him murder everyone in the house? That would be impressive.
Well, of course, he mentions other metals in his stomach as well. So I would assume if tin gives his senses an overload, maybe accessing other metals in his stomach gives him like super strength or some kind of stealth power or whatever.
So you think it's like a system of magic based around different metals giving you different powers?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he could have more than one, the fact that a metal could enhance him in any way, And then the fact that he says he has more in his stomach, that's kind of what leads me to believe that, is that there's obviously something going on with these metals that increase him in some way. Tin specifically talked about senses. It may have other powers that go along with it, but then if he's got other metals, who knows what those other ones do.
What do you guys think? Does he sound like he's on something?
Yeah, no, that sounds
I
about
think so,
right.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
He doesn't really go into what other metals he has in his stomach,
right.
So it's like but he specifically mentions that there are others, so I guess it stands to reason that they would do different things based on that.
So it's clearly dropping a
And I
little
guess
nugget for later.
Specifically, he was drawing on tin, not the metal in his stomach. So, obviously the tin does something that the others don't.
Yeah.
So they all get together and they're like, well, we have to run now, because if the Lord Ruler, when the Lord Ruler finds out what happens, we would all be blamed and get killed. And they basically conclude that, like, Kelsier did this on purpose. He knew that we wouldn't rebel on our own, so he gave us no choice. And so, I mean, based on the discussion we've already had, I assume that you guys agree with that, at least, that was Kelsier's intention, at least somewhat here.
Yeah. Yep.
So is he going to go around doing that in lots of places?
He's definitely going to be like a key player in this rebellion. He's definitely set up to be that. So, and he's the traveler. How many other places has he been to already? And
I'm interested to see if he is the main character, because my instincts would say that most storytelling, the prologue does not center around the main character of the story. But I don't know. He seems like the most interesting character that we've read about, even in the prologue and the following chapter. So it'd be a shame if he's not at least one of the main players, if not the main character.
Yeah, definitely.
They've left lots of questions unanswered about him too, so it would be kind of disappointing if he didn't show up again, I guess. Okay, so we move into part 1, which is actually titled The Survivor of Hathsin. So definitely seems related to Kelsier in some way, since we just found out that he's the survivor and he was at the pits of Hathsin. And we touched on the epigraph already. We kind of talked about that, where whoever is writing this is just, he's kind of thinking of, or he or she, he calls himself a man of principle, so I assume it's a he, but he's like, perhaps another person would name me a religious tyrant. What makes that man's opinion less valid than mine? But he ends with, I guess it all comes down to one fact. In the end, I'm the one with the armies. So we talked about whether this is somebody who's going to be in the story, or whether these are kind of in-universe quotes that are relevant to the story in some way, or just maybe theologically relevant. So I guess we'll see as we move on, hopefully, what that leads to. And so then we get Ash fell from the sky again, and Vin is watching this, and it says that Vin sat quietly in one of the crew's watch holes. So we find out that she's a member of a thieving crew.
Does it say she is Scar herself, or?
Let's see.
Because she talks about the other members of the crew having to pose as Scar, which would imply that, like, I don't know if that's just a case of they just dress differently. They dressed above their station, and they are Scar who dressed above their station, or they're not, and they have to pretend to be for this scam to work.
That's an interesting question. So whether they're noblemen thieves or Scar thieves or something.
Yeah.
We know they're scamming somebody, but we don't know all that much about them at this point.
We also talked a little bit already about, not everyone, can be a lord. So, maybe they are, the same people, but obviously at a lesser station, but not quite Scar. There's got to be other people in the civilization. You can't just have slaves and nobility. Right.
Yeah, I guess you need somebody in between.
There's the working class between the slaves and the lords.
And at in the prologue especially, when they're kind of addressing them as, we talked about how almost as creatures and not, for lack of a better term, human. I don't know if they've actually talked about being human or not, but they're roughly humanoid, I guess, and we know that at least. But
yeah,
it really made me wonder at that time if you can tell the difference between a nobleman and a Scar, if they're so different from each other that you could tell if they're not actually the same species, I guess. But we learn later in this chapter, at least, that some guys go from dressing as noblemen to dressing as Scar and impersonating one or the other based on clothes, like somebody already mentioned. So they must look at least enough alike that you can't tell at a glance, or only based on the clothes, which one is which. Which, I guess, once again, we don't know what our main characters in this chapter are. But she starts out thinking, she starts out talking about how she likes solitude, and her brother said, when you're alone, no one can betray you.
He probably did it himself.
It's the only way you'll learn. Anyone will betray you, Vin. Anyone. So that's the life that she leads. That's not very cheerful either, whether or not she's a ska. I can't imagine having that kind of attitude where it's like, no, you can't trust anyone ever. Not for 1 second. They will all betray you.
Yeah,
I guess
it's pretty rough.
Like just living on the streets. Like you have to, like every story about someone who lives on the streets is just like you have to look out for yourself first. You can't trust anyone.
That's true.
Just playing into those trappings. It's familiar ground applied to an unfamiliar setting, which helps get used to the story and the character. It's like, cool, I know what this person wants, and I know like roughly their situation.
That's a good point. It's kind of a trope at this point, like the street kids or whatever, or anyone like making a living on the streets. So
yeah.
Let's see. We meet Aleph, and we meet Kamen, who is in charge of their thieving crew, and he's also an asshole.
He's an asshole who is skilled at acting, apparently.
Yeah, like she goes on for a while about it, but that's the gist of it. That you're like, he's a good actor. He can play like self-important and pompous really well, and that makes him like valuable in some way.
Yeah, because like the other guy, whose name escapes me at this point, who put together this scam, is just like, I actually don't want to deal with you. And Vin thinks he's looking at Kamen like he wants to kill him once this is all done, but for the moment he needs him, and he's from a different crew, so it's like, all right, you're clearly good enough that someone from another crew is willing to put up with you to make this happen.
Yeah, so Kamen's in a bad mood, and Vin thinks maybe it's about the rebellion on Provincial Lord's plantation. Themos Tresting had apparently been murdered, and his manor burned to the ground. So I guess that at least sets us in time in comparison with the prologue. We know that wasn't 100 years ago.
Yeah, that was fairly recent.
And then
it doesn't say where that happened, does it? I'm just looking at the map now, and it doesn't say which area Tresting's estate was, does it?
It just says several days to the north.
Okay.
Which, when you look at the map, it's laid out a little bit weird as far as north, south, east, and west. Just to start with, because north is kind of like the upper right or something, at least the northern dominance is in the upper right.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, and then we get Vin using a bit of her luck to calm Kamen's nervousness so that he would not hit her again.
So it doesn't explicitly say this is burning metal or anything. I was just wondering, it's like, now, is this the same power and she just doesn't know that's what it is, which is why she doesn't describe it in those terms, or is this something completely different?
Right.
It's definitely something finite, because she says she's using up the last of it at some point, but...
Which I guess that would fit with burning metals if you were using up metals while you did that, but it could fit with any number of other things too. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Is luck related to what we saw Kelsier or heard about Kelsier do?
It's quite possible.
Not willing to commit too much. Got it. It's early goings yet. We're only 2 chapters in. Not even really technically 2 chapters. So
yeah.
It said, let's see, Kamen is very convincing in his nobleman's suit, which to me says that maybe he's a ska. And managing to be a convincing noble, but it's not. I don't know that it says it ever specifically in this chapter, at least. The other guy comes in. Theron is his name, the other crew leader, and this is his scam, and he hired Kamen to do this bit of it. And so Vin thinks about how these two guys don't like each other, and they want to put a knife in each other's back basically as soon as the scam is over. And then there's a creepy moment where the guy looks at her and she's like, I don't look as old as 16, but some men prefer those kind of women. And so that's kind of an to me at least.
Yep,
right.
It's definitely just
appalling.
Creepy.
And then Vin makes a suggestion where she's like, hey, the servants, Lord Jedu, who you're impersonating, is supposed to be desperate. He'd have rich clothing left for himself, but he wouldn't be able to afford such rich servants. And then Kamen hits her again. She can't risk using up her precious remaining luck. And then, or he thinks about hitting her again, and then he's like, why do you provoke me, Vin? Why do you make me hit you? It's just
typical abuser talk.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I mean, he's basically her meal ticket, isn't she? She's hanging out with him because that's how she gets money and food and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
They make reference to the brother left him with a debt.
Yeah.
And so I think she is useful to him, but she effectively is having to pay the brother's debt.
Right, like some kind of indentured servitude.
Right.
Yeah, he says that her brother left with a debt, and do you realize a less merciful man would have sold you to the whore masters long ago? It just keeps punching you in the face with this is a shitty life for this character.
Yeah.
He makes it out that it's his mercy, but she makes a point that he finds her useful, so because things just seem to go better when she's around. So while she's able to use her luck to help them with all these scams, she's useful. So he's going to say he's being merciful to her, but it's really about this is better for him. He can't explain it. He doesn't know why things just go better, but having her around makes things go better.
Yeah, I mean, that's, once again, like Dex said, that's kind of like abuser talk, where it's like,
absolutely,
I'm going to gaslight you at the same time to make it be like I'm the nice guy helping you out while I'm abusing you. It's unpleasant.
Yeah.
So I think Jaymee brought up a good point. Do you guys think that he does know what is going on, like why she's useful to have around, or is it just like a superstitious thing?
I think it said somewhere he doesn't know. He knows it's something about her, but he doesn't know how or why. And frankly, I don't think he even really cares. He's just like, all right, well, this works. I'm going to keep you around because it benefits me. I don't really give a crap how it works. I just know that it does.
Right. Yeah, I think he keeps her more around as like a good luck charm. Like he doesn't understand that there's actually a power that she is using. Because if he did, he might get wise to the fact that she uses it on him. So I think he just sees her as a good luck charm, not necessarily that she has any kind of power specifically.
Yeah.
Do you think if he did know that he would that he would be mad about the fact that she uses it on him, as long as she was also using it to like make his plan succeed?
I think so, because he's the sort of guy who would be like, I want to be in complete control of like everything around me, including my people. So if he finds out that one of his subordinates is using a power on him to make him act differently to how he actually would, he would not take that well.
I think he'd also be trying to use her in a more lucrative way than he's currently using her.
Apparently this is a big money job. They're saying there's thousands of boxings on the line. We don't know what that is yet necessarily. Maybe it's pennies, but it seems unlikely.
It's one of those rolls
millions of pennies. Yeah.
It's just the guy walks in with like one of those old money bags with the dollar sign on it. It's like, yep,
right.
Here it is.
Here's all the boxings. Okay,
so we have Kamen meets with an obligator, and the obligator's like, oh, I'm sorry, we already the Canton of Finance. So we've heard about two cantons now, the Canton of Finance and the Canton of Inquisition. But he says the Canton of Finance has already voted on your proposal, and we're not going to accept it. And Vin's over here thinking about how she would do the job. She's like, he came to meet you. That means he's still interested in negotiating. Clearly, she thinks that she would make a better crew leader. Maybe she's right.
I mean, she definitely seems to think like she thinks more analytically than he appears to, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just random behind the scenes fun. Brandon Sanderson has on his website, which I do not encourage you guys cannot go read because there's spoilers in it. But for some of his early books, he has annotations for each chapter of the book where he kind of talks about the writing process and the different thoughts that he had. And so I might bring some of that in from time to time if it's not going to spoil anything and if it's an interesting little tidbits. For this chapter, he specifically talks about how he wrote Kamen and has Vin making these suggestions, and he had to try to strike a balance where Vin, it's all from Vin's perspective, so she thinks Kamen's doing a bad job. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, or not doing what she would do. But he has to try to write it so that Kamen does things like have the rich servants at first that Vin can, comment on and be active in the story and try to risk herself by suggesting a difference. But you also have to make him capable enough in the writing that it makes sense for him to be the leader of a crew. He can't be an idiot or somebody would have like put a knife in his back already.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I mean, she doesn't whisper to him that he's here, so that means he can negotiate, right?
No, she's just thinking that.
Right, and I feel like her boss feels that too. He recognizes it too because he keeps the dialogue going.
Yeah, he definitely is not just giving up.
No.
He's still pitching his whole shtick, where he's like, yeah, we're almost broke, but that's good for you. Hey, we can give you a great deal because that'll show confidence in us, and other people will follow, and we can make our money off of them.
Right.
It was an interesting argument.
Yeah. Basically, you're our only customer, so we're gonna treat you like royalty, and then we'll get other customers and make money on them.
Yeah, but it's like, you know that we will do the job, and we will do it for less than the other people going for it, and we will devote our whole attention to it because we don't have any other customers. I'm like, that's a clever way of putting it, I guess.
And apparently, the other guy who set up the scam has been building towards this for a while, so it's all part of some bigger scam. But an interesting little note that I like in this is that the whole thing we find out in this chapter is that he's like running boats. Like he's trying to get them to use them to bring their people up here on their boats, their canal boats, which is the same thing that we saw Trusting say earlier, that the Obligator and and his new outfit came on the canal boat this morning. So
that's the main method of travel in this empire, then.
Yeah, it gives you a little look into, like, apparently that is how people travel, on boats through canals, which one has to wonder why that is. Why don't you have a system of roads? But
maybe no mist on the water. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe boats are just faster than. Actually, have they ever mentioned anything about beasts of burden so far? Are there none?
I don't know that we've heard anything about them yet, but we haven't seen any. We haven't actually seen one of the boats or anything. So, or a carriage or whatever they use to get around. I assume that if you're going around, day to day in a city, you're not taking a boat. But maybe it's Venice.
Yeah, possibly. I mean. But yeah, it's like they haven't even mentioned horses or anything like that, like the standards for fantasy things. So maybe they're extinct or they never existed. Who knows? And so
think about the landscape as well. Like you've got all this ash falling. You've got people that are, working tirelessly to keep ash off plantations and things like that. Maybe the terrain is you just can't travel on it. Like there's people not tending to it. Maybe the waterways are just more efficient to travel.
That's a good thought, because if you have a road that's traveling out through the middle of nowhere, you either have to have someone clean the ash off the road, or you let it stack up. Presumably on like a canal, the water's moving. Maybe the water washes it away. Maybe it melts in water. I don't know.
Maybe the water's just really fetid.
Yeah, it's just really gross water. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be swimming in it.
Let's see. So he says that the ministry would be remiss not to consider this opportunity, and the Laird is the name of this obligator. So yes, he does get a name. The Steel Ministry was not just a force of bureaucracy and legal authority in the Final Empire. It was like a noble house unto itself, and the more wealth it had, the better its own mercantile contracts, the more leverage the various ministry cantons had with each other and with the noble houses. So that tells us a lot about how the society is working, in that there's noble houses with like contracts making money, and the different parts of the Steel Ministry, as they call it here, the different cantons are vying with each other, and they have their own mercantile contracts and making their own money off I almost said the stock exchange, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And then Vin uses her luck. I just have to say, this seems like a really inefficient way to run a government, where they're involved in like these sort of deals with merchants and trying to get the best contracts for each different department in the government to go against
capitalism, I guess. I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, it makes sense. Like my company deals a lot with government contracts at the moment, and we're competing against other businesses to try and win the contract from each other. But it's it will be for a specific department of the government, and then other departments will have to negotiate other contracts with. So like that's not. I wouldn't say it's unfamiliar ground.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it didn't seem that unfamiliar to me, I guess.
Okay. Let's see. Vin uses her luck. Then she pushes harder. So there's degrees here. I just like the way it's like he cocked his head, looking thoughtful, opened his mouth to speak, and then she used her last bit of luck, and he says, okay, I'll take your proposal to the council. And that brings us to the end of the chapter. So apparently her luck worked here. Whatever the power is, we still don't know.
Well, I mean, her luck works insofar as this stage of the scam. He's going to take the proposal back to the council. There's still nothing to say this plan is going to work for them, and that the council is going to go for this proposal. So,
right. And,
I mean, she's done her job, but
to use the luck on them. So
no. So any number of things can still go wrong for them, and knowing Kamen, however you want to pronounce it, like. He's probably going to take that out on his underlings, and we've already seen he likes to hit her. So, if things do go sour, it's not going to look good for her, probably.
Especially if she's the good luck charm who was supposed to make the deal go through.
Yeah, I just get the impression it's like when things go right, she's the good luck charm. But if she's if she's the good luck charm and good luck doesn't come their way for whatever reason, I feel like things would happen to her. Even worse than anyone else, because you were supposed to make sure this didn't happen, or something. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about what's coming for her.
And if she's talking about she's just used the last of her luck,
mm-hmm.
This is where we're going to learn a bit more about, I guess, her power, and possibly she will learn a bit more about her power, depending on how much she knows already. But can she get more luck? Has she just, outlived her usefulness? What's going to happen to her character now?
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't mention the metal, so if it is the same power, she presumably doesn't know how it works.
So she's just getting metal somehow and burning it without realizing is...
Potentially, if there's, I don't know, if there's trace metal in the food that they eat every day, and she just feels like, ooh, I feel like I can do this now.
You wouldn't want a bunch of metal in your food. But yeah, I'm sure there's traces in everything that we eat of random stuff. I read somewhere that in the U.S. the FDA will allow chocolate to be at least 15% cockroach parts and consider it pure chocolate because apparently they lay their eggs in the cocoa beans, so it gets ground up with the cocoa beans.
Yeah, they allow a large percentage of maggots to be in maraschino cherries too.
Oh jeez.
Oh.
So that's a good place to get towards the end. But yes, all that to say that there could totally be metal in her food or something. It's true.
Well, I don't know. It's like the old joke of how much iron is in the meat that we're eating. X-Men 2 Magneto style. So stuff you have a good steak and all of a sudden I've got good luck powers now.
Of course, you'd have to be careful because assuming this world works like ours, you need that metal to live. Your blood needs it to be alive, so.
Well, yeah,
that's also true.
Iron or something, but other metal might be poisonous to you if you ate it. So.
True.
If their bodies work the same way ours do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last segment that we're gonna do is we can this whole discussion actually lets us taper quite nicely into predictions. I want everyone to make some predictions. I'm thinking about as we proceed, maybe even keeping score about whose predictions turn out and whose don't.
No.
But for now, we won't.
We're competing. Let's go.
So what do you guys? We'll let Dak go first this time. What do you think? Any kind of prediction you want to make? What's going to happen next chapter throughout the whole book? Who's going to show up? Who's going to die? Stuff. Whatever.
I feel like I said, I don't have a good feeling about how this whole deal and everything is going to go down. I feel like something is going to go wrong, and I feel like Kamen will blame Vin for it, and Vin will probably have to go on the run or something like that, and she'll probably bump into Kelsier down the line, because I definitely feel like we haven't seen the last of him. I feel like, she'll probably get caught up in this rebellion that he's trying to foment round and about everywhere.
So the job is going to go sideways, and Kelsier is going to show up. So you think the job will go sideways, but not through any fault of their own, basically. It's.
I don't know at this point, but it's I just feel like if there's a plan in a story, it's gonna go wrong somewhere.
That's a good point.
In any story, if there is a plan and you know about the plan, those ones don't work. If you as the reader or the viewer don't know about the plan, then it usually comes off without a hitch because you find out about it after the fact. In this case, we know what the scam is, we know what's going to happen. So I feel like, all right, this is going to go downhill pretty quick. And I don't know how, I don't know why, but I feel like for whatever reason, my prediction is Kamen will blame Vin, whether or not it's actually her fault. and that's gonna really drive a wedge because, like, I don't know, the brief glimpse we saw of Theron seemed to indicate he doesn't stuff around like Kamen does, and if he starts blaming her as well, then she's really going to have a rough time of it. She's going to have to really go on the run to avoid both their groups are going to come after her with knives. And so,
I mean, speaking of him, of Theron or whatever his name was, is even if the job goes perfectly, she was theorizing that, like, they're waiting to stab each other in the back, the crew leaders themselves. So everything could go right, and it could still be trouble for them if she's right about, like, the attitude that they have.
Yep, that is also a possibility.
Okay, Jaymee, any predictions?
I would sort of tend to agree. I think Vin is probably going to be separated from the group somehow, whether she runs away or, I don't know, it's obviously not going to go well, whatever's about to happen. I do think that she and Kelsia will probably join up. I think it would be really interesting if she doesn't know about her powers, if they're similar, to have sort of Kelsia guide her through that, maybe teach her that. I'm also, is Kelsia maybe, half-breed effectively as well? I think it would be really interesting to see how that story plays out. If these powers are, the magical powers that we're talking about that they're not supposed to have, how does he have these? And I think that's how he's ended up with powers. So that's my prediction.
So, yeah. Is he like a half-breed? And if you have to be like a half-breed to have powers, does that mean that Vin is also? Or I don't know.
Possibly,
yeah. That's interesting. Okay, Joe, your turn.
They predicted things that were in my head too, but I'll say this one other thing I was thinking is I hope that we learn more about how these powers manifested, and if Vin really is the other survivor of the pit or whatever, the Hasfin, whatever it is. I would hope that ties in some way, but I don't know. I just keep thinking in the title Mistborn. So my assumption is that the mists gave them whatever powers they have, and that being out in the mists, something happened to them, something, whether they were born in it or molded by it, something happened to give them these powers. And I hope that my prediction is that they'll hopefully go into more detail about that and how that works.
Interesting. So it's like the mists have to be involved because of the title. I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be just like philosophical also, I suppose. There's like, if you have these powers and the mists are mystical, then they're related somehow in people's minds. But yeah, it could be more direct.
I mean, the fear that they had of the mists, they keep bringing that, they brought up the mist that comes at night. It's also got a very Game of Thrones feel to it as well. So I feel like it has something to do with the mist for sure.
Okay, interesting. I guess we will find out. So here, as we're starting to wrap up the episode, I wanted to get y'all's opinions on, did you feel like this was an appropriate amount of content? Do you feel like we could have done another chapter, or you want to do one chapter at a time? What were y'all's thoughts on that?
I think this was probably a good amount, considering, we're aiming for hour-long episodes. I'd say probably 2 chapters would be the limit, looking at how long we've already gone for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also means that there's enough time to dissect small chapters. If we're trying to do 3 chapters in that time, we simply wouldn't have enough time, I think.
No. We definitely have to go a little faster and skip over as much detail as, and that's probably partly my fault. I'm stopping you guys a lot to ask for opinions on stuff, but it's also partly because we're just entering the world, so everything is new and kind of interesting at this point.
Yeah, I feel like we really dissected it quite a bit more than I was anticipating. So. Not that that's bad. I'm just saying that,
Jaymee, are you okay with this number?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, this it did go a little bit longer, but it is a brand new world for us, so
really got to wrap our heads around it.
I think 2 is good. 2 chapters.
Okay. Then for the next episode, we will plan on chapters 2 and 3. That's right, listeners. If you're reading along, chapters 2 and 3 we will discuss in the next episode. And let's see, I want to touch on. Oh yes, if you guys, anyone listening, you can leave us reviews and rate us, please, on Apple Podcasts. That will help get the attention of more people. You can send emails to the Sanderlanche. There's an E on the end of that, just like on Avalanche, at gmail.com. Or check us out on the Facebook page, the Sanderlanche page on Facebook, which isn't actually up in reality yet, but will be before the episode comes out. I'm wanting to get like at least 2 or 3 of these kind of in the box before we put the first one out, so that we're a little bit ahead. Which means if anybody does send in any emails or stuff, it may not be picked. It may not be mentioned. Whatever questions or comments you had the very next episode, because I'm hoping to be ahead if everything works out. Fingers crossed. But until next time, thanks everyone for listening.
Bring out the brother.